Yo, it's Guido coming at you with the afternoon coffee talk. I've got my coffee and check this out. 122 TM. So by now you've probably heard a lot of the rumors. I usually don't do this, talk too much about tanks that haven't come out. But this one's a little odd, and to be quite honest, it's a little bit irritating how it's going down. So I thought we'd talk about it because, in fact, it is already in the comparison tool in Garage. If you want to know what the stats of the 122 TM are so far, you can go to your comparison tool down the bottom right there. I'll show you that in just a second, and you can take a look. This is it. This is my actual live NA account, and I am looking at it in the comparison tool. So we take this little guy here, and I've got it set up. You can see 122 TM right there. So the rumors on this are flying hard and fast. The best information is that there will be a marathon starting on the 12th. Something like about 10 days, standard marathon stuff. Going to be pretty grindy, and you can get a discount, or if you really grind it out, you can get yourself a 122 TM. Break. Before we go any further, all of this is subject to change. It may not happen. I don't know, but there's so many leaks on this thing. Now, normally what happens is this isn't in the comparison tool. CCs get it a little bit early, and we're under NDA. Oftentimes, that's a little bit closer into the release. It's possible we get a hold of it and are able to create content. But it's been a couple weeks out ahead of this thing, has been this big bow wave of leaks. And it's this case of we have, at what point does your official leak site become a de facto news source or a de facto news, article? You know what I'm saying? So we've got this weird situation where you get these rumors and you don't know if they're sanctioned real rumors or fake rumors, and then all content creators start creating content on the rumors, yet CCs are sometimes then put under NDA, sometimes after the rumors but before the release. It's jacked up. It's jacked up, and right now what's funny about this is I'm not under NDA on this. I can talk about all the rumors that I want. If I had been put under NDA, then I would have to caveat this whole video with where I got the information, right? But I don't now because I'm not actually under NDA. If I was under NDA, I wouldn't really be able to discuss that whole piece, but I could talk about the leaks that I saw. And I don't necessarily know if it's the official leak or the leak. You see where I'm getting at with this? It is a convoluted mess. And what's crummy about it at the end of the day is I'm at the end of the whip. The other CCs are at the end of the whip. And if you release something early, you get your stuff smacked. Even though you really don't know what the F the rules are. I mean, you know what the rules are, but then everyone's breaking the rules. And the rules are a little bit different depending on whether you're on under NDA or not. And it's a mess. It is. So I'm gonna do something I don't do. I'm jumping on the hype train. We're gonna talk about the 122 TM because I can. All these numbers on this tank are subject to change. It could come out in 4 months. It could come out in 4 seconds. It could come out on the 12th. I happen to think that's pretty good rumor. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong and this video is all for naught. I don't know. Probably going to have a marathon for the Tier 8 Chinese 122 TM. This is interesting. These are anti-tank guided missiles. This is a tank that's entering into the regime of main battle tanks, a transitional phase between the heavy medium kind of World War II into the early Cold War, and then transitioning into later Cold War / modern era with main battle tanks kind of tank. You can see it's running around with guided missiles. We don't have any missiles in this game, just as one example. It's got quite a large gun. It's a slow firing, hard hitting gun, and it's got a whole bunch of armor. So this is a different kind, to some extent, of medium. If you think about the Chinese T-34-3, which has preferential matchmaking. It has an atrociously inaccurate derpy gun with some decent armor. Now this tank doesn't have preferential matchmaking, and it's got a big gun because it's dropping 400 alpha. We'll hit the numbers in just a second. It's dropping 400 alpha, but it's insanely accurate. It is not the standard Chinese derpy gun, the Russian copy that is inaccurate. Somehow the Chinese made this very accurate 122 that they put on this thing, which it was completely different, or they've improved the fire control, or whatever the reasoning is behind this particular hover medium, Type 59 T62 clone somehow has this extremely accurate 122 at tier 8. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe that gun was just that good. I don't even know if it's a real gun, to be quite honest. You guys would have to tell me on whether that was some fantasy gun or what this was going on with this tank. I don't think. Can you see the? Yes, you can. During the Soviet-Chinese border conflict, Chinese forces captured a T-62, which had a significant impact on the development of the 122 TM. Though the T-62 does not have a 122 on it, two prototypes were manufactured featuring additional armament, 4 anti-tank missiles on the turret, and something else that is not there, but you can hover over it and see it. A double-barreled dish machine gun. The construction proved faulty. But not in World of Tanks, my friends. There is no faulty construction here. We only have a good tank, I think. I'm going to not make a huge judgment because I don't do that unless I play it. But we'll talk a little bit about the numbers. You can see it's a 400 alpha, 233 average pen. Wow. You heard that right. 233. That's the standard round. That's the standard round. 3.58 rate of fire. Very slow rate. 16 points, almost 17 second gun load. Wow. Gun traverse is decent at 31. Gun depression is extremely good for a hover medium. How does this 122 that's shoehorned into this, look at this, folks, -8 depression. Oh really? I guess maybe with the slope of the turret right there, okay. -8 gun depression. 2.21 aiming time. You know what? You make fun of that. The model, the reality. Ultimately, it's a number that they can move around in order to create balance or try to create balance. So, I mean, you can look at it and go, there's no way that gets -8, but at the same time, it's a balancing decision as well. So, who really cares? Anyway, I just feel like that big 122 doesn't depress 9 degrees in that turret. That's my point. 2.21 aiming time is pretty darn good. Look at this, folks. A Soviet-style 122 at tier 8 with a .32 dispersion. That is unheard of. That is unheard of. There's some sweet magic fire control in this bad boy. This is bad. 1,430 DPM. Now, I am the first one to say that DPM is not everything people want to think it is in this game. But when you start having DPM that's that much lower than its peers, it does have an effect. However, break. The DPM, the important part about DPM is the effectiveness of getting rounds down range and penning. And when you have a 400 alpha and a 233 standard pen, and that much accuracy, you have a pretty dang good chance, relatively, of putting the round on target and getting a pen, especially for a medium tank. Tier 8, guys, that's rolling with a 233 average penetration on a 400 alpha gun. So what we have here, balance-wise, is a lot of accuracy, a lot of alpha tied to a pretty bad reload time and a low average DPM. So we'll see if that translates in-game to a pretty good tank. I have a feeling it does, because the next thing we're going to talk about is the armor. And this goes back to the effective DPM, or the DPM that you can put down range, and how the game is played. You have a hole at 120 on the front with decent angling. Not quite hover medium angling, but pretty good. We'll take a look at the tanks.gg what that looks like. And then look at this turret, folks, 280 on the turret. That is going to challenge tier 10 standard rounds on a lot of tier 10 tanks. It is going to challenge the tier 10 tanks even with their standard rounds. It's not going to challenge a lot of the high pin 8s and 9s with gold. However, again, break, comma, comma. When it is a rounded angle, heat can have trouble with that. Okay, on the heat rounds, APCR not as much. Still, 280 is a lot to work with, and 120 on the front with some angling is nothing to scoff at, especially when you then translate or add into that -8 gun depression and kind of look down angles as you're going hold down and increasing the effective armor on that upper plate from 120 to auto bounce areas pretty quickly. We'll look at that in tanks.gg. Specific power is okay. Its top speed is good, but its ground resistance are pretty bad. It looks kind of sprightly on numbers, but once you add in the ground resistance, I think it's going to be a little bit sluggish, and I would expect it to be something like the 274 Alpha in its feel. But we'll see when it comes out and how it actually drives. But that's my guesstimation, is going to be somewhere around 274 Alpha. So not sprightly, but not terrible. Can get around the battlefield pretty good. As a matter of fact, I find this to be very 274 Alpha-esque, with some heavier hitting power and some better accuracy, but much less DPM. That's what I'm seeing, at least just as an initial broad brush idea of it. Stationary and moving camo is decent for a medium, and not a great view range, 370. That's on the low end for those things. Let's take a quick look at the tanks.gg. And this is the armor I was talking about. When you're starting to talk about turrets, holy macaroni, look at that bad boy with the curvature. I mean, in the 300s, quickly getting to auto bounce around the edges. Even this flat bit right here is up in the 300s based on the rounding of it. And almost any angle you come at it with, at least front angles, it's just looking bad. Now, there are some pretty big weak spots up here. Although these look worse, I think, than they are. If we look at the actual physical model here, this one's shorter, this one's quite large. So that is a really hittable, especially close in hatch. And you've got one on each side, even though this one's a little bit lower. It's still hittable from either side as you're side scraping or poking around the corner. You've got one on each side to deal with. So that could parlay into game terms into a pretty decent weakness on this as far as taking on this very strong turreted armor and the whole armor. And then when I'm talking about going hold down, it doesn't take much look down before you're getting into some serious into auto bounce area, or just very, very strong effective armor millimeters or thickness based on angle. And then you get this side scrape stuff. That's a pretty big angle though, coming around the corner. People will probably just pop you right in the side there. And I think this is probably spaced armor along the side, which is going to help eat heat. You don't want to sneak up underneath there, and of course you got tracks that are eating heat. So very strong frontal profile with a couple decently large weak spots on the front. Lower plate is definitely pinnable. Straight on or look down, the upper plate's not too bad, but even so, 160, that's pretty good from a little bit above. All right, let's take a look now real quickly at a comparison amongst some of its peers here. So I've put in some of the Russian and Chinese, and of course the Polish CS52 LIS, which is between the 44-100 and the 52 LIS, are kind of the Russian Huffer medium class, and the 274 Alpha, which is quite good, I think. Chucked in the T54 Mod 1 to also compare along the way. We take a look at it. The average damage alpha is extremely high on the 122 TM. There's that amazing penetration at 233 with the standard round. Rate of fire we talked about is low, long reload time. Gun traverse is decent, although not as fast as the rest. You can see that it's down there at 31, which you're going to feel that if you're just trying to move turret from one side to the other. That's quite slow, actually. -8, best in class among these. Look at the dispersion, 0.32. That's base, fellas. Baseline, 0.32 dispersion on this bad boy. With, like I said, the aiming time being one of the lowest, not quite T44-100, which is known for a fairly accurate gun. This really is a on par accuracy with the 44-100, especially once you start throwing some food and things on it. 1400 is at the high end, so quite durable actually. right there. There's that armor. Almost every armor bit is best in class, minus the side of the 54 Mod 1. But 80 is going to stop you from getting auto-pinned by 122s or overmatched, which is nice, by 120 or 122 millimeter cannons there. Strong armor, like I talked about. There's the speed at 50, 15 backwards, decent, not quite as good as the 44-100. The trigger speed is 41, which is pretty much the lowest, so it is going to be a little bit sluggish. Now, you add that in there with the terrain resistance, it's probably going to turn a bit like a boat. So one of this thing's weaknesses may be its general lack of mobility. All right, it's decent in a straight line at 50, but a general lack of kind of close-in maneuverability. Even though it looks like a hover medium, it's very possible it's not going to drive like one. Like I said, I think it's probably going to be closer to a 274 Alpha idea. I did include the 34-3 just because it's kind of a similar big stick medium, even though it is a preferential, and it has some pretty big differences. You know, it's sitting at 186 and 233 for the pins, just as one example. And the rest of the numbers we talked about. So let's take a quick look at the 274 Alpha here. So I think it really kind of matches up closely with that. And the difference then, of course, quite a bit more alpha, much slower. In fact, this thing fires about twice every time the 122 fires. And when we get down to DPM, we're looking at 1200 on the 274 Alpha, but 1400 on the 122. So this was a knock against the 274 Alpha that it's DPM. I'm sorry, complete brain fart. I'm looking at hit points. Complete brain fart. There we go. Higher DPM based on the almost shooting twice per time that the 122 TM fires at 2225 and that really low 1430. So this may be the Achilles heel of the 122 TM that's going to be hard for people to overcome. However, again, the accuracy of the gun is pretty amazing. In fact, if we go in here and we configure this thing, now remember that every time I do these kinds of things, I've taken all of the buffs off of it and I've given it 100% crude. But let's go ahead, give all the skills that matter. We're going to put on vents, we're going to put on a rotation device, and we're going to put on a rammer. Then we're going to give it food. We're not going to worry about the other things because it doesn't matter. And then we're going to give it a directive of the vents, just as a buff that will work along the way. And look what we've done to the dispersion on this, and we brought it down to 0.29. And we've buffed the DPM up to 1,759, which is actually in the ballpark. Now, you put all the equipment onto the 274 Alpha, and its DPM is going to be head and shoulders above the 1,700, but you're kind of getting into kind of a reasonable area. 13 seconds is long, but not quite an eternity. Almost, it's almost an eternity, but not quite the eternity that it was. Minus 10% dispersion during vehicle movement and traverse, based on the bonuses here. One thing that's interesting here is when you look at the crew numbers that you get in the configuration tool, it doesn't really give you an idea of the soft stats, how they're affected, although it does give you some of the bonuses that will kind of affect the soft stats down here. And unfortunately, what they haven't done is they haven't put snapshot in here, because I don't think it actually helps you with that. During vehicle move, yeah, it does actually. So snapshot is actually a crew skill, I think, that will affect some of this extra information that we put down here. You can actually take a look and get, if you look at dispersion and hold it over, oh, it didn't do it, did it? Yeah, it's not. Usually I thought it gave you all the bonuses that you had. Could be wrong. Yeah, well, it's not showing it anyway. So I wish the comparison tool would have all the soft stats in it, is the bottom line of all that. You can go on the tanks.gg and go through some of the soft stats. They're middle of the road, not great. A couple of them are bad, but I don't think it's going to hurt too much, this dispersion of 0.29. And then you can minimize the soft stat, the damage the soft stats do to when you fire, when you move your turret, when you move your the hull, all that stuff, by using the various equipment that help you out with that down here below. So we're going to see. We'll see what happens, man. I just wanted to kind of throw that video out, try something a little bit different. I don't have the tank in the garage to show you. Try something just a little bit different there, and see what you guys think. You know, it's a weird situation. It's going down a little bit different. I'm trying to see if I can get into. There we go. It's kind of going down a little bit different than it usually does, so I thought I'd throw this this video out there and dig down into the 122 TM just a little bit more. It will be cool to take a look at this video and then do my 10-20 battles and go back and see if I change my mind on any of these things. Which was another reason why I wanted to do this video, is to see if that initial broad brush impression gets different after I play the game or play the tank a little bit and check it out. What I wanted to do, can we get to the gun? Yes, we can. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about right at the end. 233, and Pilgrim and I talked about this. 233 standard pen. 299, I'm assuming that's heat pen. 209, this is a tier 8. This is a tier 8 medium. Is it a really mobile TD? I think you could play it that way. Is it a hard-hitting support medium to go in with the wolf pack and either tank shots with its armor and then drop the 400 on people and be the big stick to give the other mediums a little bit of fear? Absolutely. Can it run with the heavies? 100%. Look at the pen it's got. And then you dab 2 and you got 299. It's gonna be quite comfortable, same tier running with heavies. This thing is gonna brutalize lower tier heavies. Absolutely brutalize them. This will be interesting. Will this particular design, from a balance perspective from Wargaming, where you have this really slow firing but very accurate gun that looks like it can put its shots down range pen and get its damage, but does it quite slowly with some good armor, does that work for a medium? I don't know if we have one quite like it. That's why I included the T34-3. That's the first thing that came to mind when I looked at it. And the T34-3 can do some of those things in the context of it being a preferential tank. It does have the fear factor of the 390 Alpha gun. It can run with the heavies, get in there and cause a lot of pain because of its extra pen with its heat round. This one seems like it's going to be able to do that as well. Of course, tier 10 is a whole nother animal. Some 9s are a whole nother animal. They're still probably going to eat it a bit for lunch, but that turret is going to hold up against a lot of them. You're going to be able to play turret games with some higher tier tanks, and unless they're dabbing 2, you're going to have a reasonable expectation of bouncing with that amazing hull, or turret, sorry, and decent hull. All right, there you go. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you like this kind of information? Do you not care? We'll go ahead and we'll revisit this video when I come out with the review, provided it actually is the 122 TM. That's the Marathon, and we're not all being given the old head fake by Wargaming. Who knows? Who knows? I don't. I certainly don't. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for coming by. I'm going to finish up my coffee, go ahead and wrap up this video and get it ready to send out to you. So we will see ya.